welcome to EO Member Stories for the Mepa region. My name is Faizan Sayed. I am your Member Experience Director for the fiscal year. And we decided to have these stories because they're such a popular event format at our chapter level that we decided to take them to the regional level and feature members who had very unique, very interesting stories in their EO journey and how EO has impacted their life. And one such story comes out of EO U.A.E with Saahil Mehta, who's joining us today. Saahil is in the diamond trading business. He's also a real estate investor, but most recently, he's become an author, a coach, and a public speaker thanks to his EO journey. And it all started with a car crash. Can you tell me more about that, Sahil? And how are you today?
Hey Faizan, doing great, thanks. Let's talk about this car crash. This was probably about a year into marriage. We're coming home one evening. It's maybe 2 in the morning, and we're driving along the main highway here. And all of a sudden,
And this is in
you know,
Dubai, right?
this is in Dubai. This is in Dubai, and it's a little late. So my wife is next to me. She's sleeping. It's just me driving awake, and all of a sudden, I start feeling tired. But it's not a tired where you're like, okay, maybe I need to stop, or let me just get home. I'm a few minutes away now. It was one of those where the curtains closed, and then
Wow.
the next thing I know, the car starts shaking really, really, loud, and we come to this abrupt stop, and I'm every airbag in this car has come out. And the first thing I do is I look to my right, and I look at my wife because she's screaming, and I check, and I luckily I don't see any blood. I ask her, is she okay? And she's okay. I look at myself, and, my airbag didn't even come out, but luckily for me, I was, it looked like, and it felt like I was okay. And so we stepped out, and what had happened was we had veered off the road and crashed into rocks and trees. And
Wow.
the car was crushed from the back. It was
Yeah.
crushed from the front. And one tire was even, it flew off and was about 5 meters away. And looking, if you were someone, a random just passerby looking into this, you'd think very little chance of survival. That's how bad
Right.
it was. It was a total
How did that happen? How did this
write off.
crash happen?
You know, ever since a teenager, even though I'm very energetic, I love sports, I'm active, I would get these energy dips. And I just accepted it as being part of me. I didn't really talk about it much, but growing up, I've fallen asleep on the dinner table at a restaurant. I've fallen asleep on the sofa while people are talking. I've fallen asleep on the phone speaking to someone. Even at work, sometimes I would fall asleep. So I get these pockets of being extremely lethargic.
Hmm.
And I've even fallen asleep in a nightclub when there's so much noise going on.
Wow. And
Yeah,
this has been all your life, right? You lived with this. You accepted this.
I accepted it as part of being me. And
Right.
I didn't really see it as an issue. And even the car crash, which happened approximately in 2010, I didn't take it seriously enough. I just said, this is part of me. Maybe I just stopped driving at night, which is what I did.
Oh, wow, that's a major life change.
Yeah, I would take a taxi, and then eventually Uber, Kareem, whatever was available in the region, but I just stopped
Hmm.
driving at night. Um, and little did I realize that this was something that was not me, and it could easily be rectified.
And how did you figure that out, that it could be rectified because you lived with it all your life?
So, one thing, after joining EO, I was told by the chapter president at the time, Fadi Falaha. He said, Sahil, if you really want to experience the magic, you just got to trust the system. It's like a gym. You got to keep going and practicing to build those muscles. And he said, just
Yeah.
jump into the deep end. Don't dip your toes in the water. So funnily enough, I was actually at his wedding in 2016, and I was sitting on the breakfast table with some fellow members from the UAE. And I said, it's that my inner voice was telling me, just talk about this. Like, it's okay. People keep saying there's no judgment. Let's test it. So I started to share, and I started talking about how I was lethargic, how I was bloated, how I was having challenges sleeping. I'd wake up with a stuffy nose and head.
And this is
Um,
the first time you're sharing this stuff with people you've just recently met.
Yeah, I might have shared like little bits and bobs with someone here or there, but this is the
Yeah.
first time I shared the entire story. And
And
what
this
was
was at a
amazing,
retreat? This was at a retreat or during forum? How did you
oh no,
do it?
so this was actually at Fadi's wedding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was at his wedding at the breakfast table. And so this other couple, who I became very friendly with over the years, they said, we have experienced some of these same things ourselves, and including some of our children. Why don't go meet this doctor? And it was a functional doctor, and it's because it sounds like you might have some intolerances and or some vitamin deficiencies. So I went to this doctor. We got all these blood tests under the sun, and two things came out of it. One, I was highly intolerant to three food items that I was consuming on a daily basis. And that's probably
Which
why I didn't
ones?
figure it out.
What were they?
Dairy,
Ah,
oats, and almonds, right? And the
interesting.
thing is, I eat these
And
things
they
every
all
single
seem
day.
very healthy, right? Because they seem
Yeah,
healthy.
absolutely. And so I gave that up. And in addition to that, you know how you get those blood reports where it says
Hmm.
you should be between this and this range? I
Hmm.
wasn't even in the range. I was off the chart, like
In terms
very,
of
very low.
deficiency, wow. And this
Yeah.
is for
This
vitamin
was,
deficiency.
yep. And this was vitamin B12. I mean, I was so low. The doctor actually says, I don't even know how you're functioning and talking to me. She goes, you must just be used to running on adrenaline.
So
And so I
vitamin
immediately,
D12 is what you need for energy to keep you going. And if you have less of it, it makes you lethargic.
well, look, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to comment on the exact what effect it has. But what I can tell you is having extreme deficiencies or lack of nutrients and minerals are definitely going to affect your body in a not so good way. And that's what was happening to me. So I got these shots of vitamin B12. I had to take 3 shots over 4 weeks, I think it was. And I was also extremely low on vitamin D3. So I started supplementing. And I want to
Mm.
share what happened because I was tracking my body composition before that. And
Hmm.
before this, even though I was doing a lot of activity and all, I'd still have a bit of a belly, like the body fat, certain things just wouldn't disappear.
Hmm.
I was about 24% body fat. Within 6 months, I lost 10% of my weight. But it wasn't like muscle and this and that. Luckily, I had this scale which I was stepping on every few days. My
Hmm.
body fat went from 24% down to 13
Wow,
because
that's pretty good.
because my body just started working better, right? I mean, I didn't have when you have bloating and the inflammation, my body's just in constant battle, the lack of
Yes,
sleep, the vitamin deficiencies. So my body is just working on repairing, and it's not necessarily doing what it should be doing for
right.
most other people. So once I eliminated these I would say problems or challenges in my life, my energy level shot up, my level of sleep shot up, my health shot up. I mean, it was a miracle. I'm so blessed that I was able to have that conversation that day.
Wow, and it was because you met the right people, and that too at a
Yeah.
wedding, out of all the places.
Well, not just a wedding, but it was a wedding of EO members in an environment where I felt safe to open up and where the fear of judgment started to fall down.
And that's the one thing that this sort of community provides us, is that you're able to meet people, find out that they are part of that community, and instantly, it doesn't matter where the world you are, you're able to connect and open up and get and hear a perspective that could change your life, which it did in your case.
Yeah. And look, I want to take it one step further. I mean, I was fairly still new to EO. And,
Hmm.
we just went on our forum retreat as well. And it was an
Hmm.
international retreat. And we were discussing how can we make our retreat more impactful. Now, please keep in mind, we're a new forum. It's I think, our second retreat together. And I said, guys, let's really take this no judgment seriously. Just after what I experienced, I said, how do we
Hmm.
take it up a notch?
Hmm.
And we all agreed to it. And for me, it's like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders because one of the things I always did as a person is I love to please others. I want their validation. I'm
Mm.
sure there's something from childhood in that. Um, as I dug deeper, that's where it's sourced from. But I wanted people's validation, so I want to please others. So I would often do things or agree to things, even if I really deep inside I was upset with the decision. And so I experienced joy that was euphoric during those few days. And I experienced what it was like to be me. Because I wasn't wearing the mask anymore. I was being myself. I had the
And this
courage.
and this environment of no judgment is what allowed you to sort of experience that for the first time. And you'd never experienced any of this before. You didn't realize that you were a people pleaser prior to sort of discussing or talking openly about it.
Again, the same like with the bloating and the lethargy and all that stuff. I just thought, this is me. And
Right,
I just accepted me for who I am.
right,
And a great analogy I use is, imagine if you're just walking with no shoes your entire life. You're getting splinters, you're getting blisters, you're getting cuts. And then I come to you one day and I say, hey, look what I have. Here's a pair of Nike Air Max shoes. And then you wear them and you go, oh my goodness, is this how lovely walking can be? So
right.
comfortable. And so that's what happened. I had a taste. And it's not like I've never been myself before, but when I was, it was in small pockets. This was for 4 days. And I hadn't been
Hmm.
like that for 4 days. Maybe in my early childhood, but I
Right.
couldn't remember the last time I was like that. And I
And
came
this
back.
transformed you when you came back, probably.
Yeah, because I came back and I said, I don't want to go back to that man that I used to be. This man who
Right,
feared judgment so much that I didn't have the courage to be me. And so I started looking at all areas of my life and going, what is holding me down, preventing me from being myself? Because my forum might not judge me, but the world I live in does judge me.
right.
And then it hit me that, Sahil, even if you're half of what you were that day, it's so much better than where you are today.
True. And so then you came back. I want to take a sort of diversion into the business side of it, because when you came back, you've got your diamond trading business that you're a part of. You also were in the hospitality space for a few years. You made a pivot into becoming an author and a public speaker. Talk to me about why did that pivot take place? Was for the same reason that there was a discovery of self, and then you said, you know what, I want to go talk about this.
Hmm. So I changed a lot. And when I changed, I would say not change, I transformed a lot. People just would come up to me and go, Sahil, what's going on? You look happier, you're healthier, you're just glowing, your relationships are stronger. And so I started sharing in small pockets. You get on a dinner table or at a bar or a cafe, and then the sharing became an opportunity to speak in front of my chapter. And that opportunity led to me speaking in front of my chapter for the second time. And then someone from EO Kenya hears about me and says, hey, I heard you speak about decluttering your life. Why don't you come over? And then as I was doing that, I had this immense internal fulfillment and pleasure, because I'm like, wow, I'm able to share something that's positively impacting someone else's life. And at that time, I didn't think I could make a career out of it. I'm like, okay, it's like a hobby. I was doing it for free, or someone would pay me a little bit of money. But then people said, yeah, we're ready to pay you. And I said, ooh, okay, this can actually be something. And so I started taking it more seriously. And then I realized not everyone has access to me. So I wrote a book as well, because a book gives structure, and it makes it available for anyone, right? It's 15 or
Mm-hmm.
$20, or depending on which part of the world you're in. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
low cost of entry for someone to purchase. But that allows the message to be spread to those who can't necessarily afford to get one-on-one or get me closer to them. And so then I started asking myself, well, if this is fulfilling, and it felt like I was living out my purpose, which is to spread the message of nonviolence,
Mm.
right? To really spread the message of love. Because what I found is, when you have a lot of clutter in here, which is what I had beforehand, the moment you start removing it, you get peace within.
Right,
And the moment you get peace within, all of a sudden that energy flows out, and your environment around you starts to become more peaceful as well.
right,
So perhaps that's your health. Perhaps that's your relationships with someone, which could be a spouse, it could be your children, your parents, your business partner. It could be that voice in your head that's just that monkey that won't stop bouncing around, and all of a sudden you're able to quieten it more and be able to focus and be more productive. And it could be just stuff like, before I'm like, oh, I want to buy this, I want to buy that. And then I go, well, do I really need it? Is it really adding value in my life?
And this
So
is what your talk is about. So you basically talk about all of the impact and the changes that you went through from that, let's say, first accident that kind of brought this to surface to the transformational experience where you learned more about your diet and your body and how that started impacting your mood, your behavior, which then decluttered your life. And now all of this gets packaged into you writing a book and talking about it. And
yeah,
this is now a full-fledged business of yours. Is this something that you do on a regular basis, even full-time or part-time? How does that work?
yeah. So I mean, what it forced me to do, and as in EO, I'm sure you hear it all the time. Work on your business, not in the
Yes,
business,
I
right?
used that line
We've heard.
yesterday with my team. I said, if we're all working in the business, who's working on the business?
Yeah, and I kept thinking to myself, Sahil, if you pull yourself out from the operations, daily operations, the business is not going to work without you, right? This virus that we
Yeah,
many of us have.
yeah.
But I realized, I said, shit, how can I do this more seriously and allocate more time if I'm in the business? I just don't have the time to do both. I mean, I still have my family to attend to, my friends, my holidays, and my physical fitness. And I realized the only way to do this was to start removing myself out from the daily operations and working on the business. And so in everything that I'm involved in, I started putting a team in place, giving them more responsibility. They may not do it the way I want. And sometimes you're like, oh, why'd you do it that way? But
Mm.
I gave them the ownership. I gave them the 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 responsibility, but that allowed me to work on and free myself up to be able to do this. And
How often
so,
do you travel around and how often do you speak and where have you been? Tell me something. Send me your most interesting speaking engagement that you've had so far.
oh, most interesting. I mean, all of them are great because I love going and speaking to these, the entrepreneurs around the world. I've gone
Hmm.
to Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Jordan. Uh, where else have I gone? I've gone. I'm forgetting a few. Obviously, I've done the UAE.
Right.
Um, I'm yeah. So it keeps growing. I'll be going to India soon.
Nice.
So it's growing. I was also invited to Islamabad, but then it was just when COVID was opening, and then
Right, right.
things were a bit iffy, and then it closed
Yeah.
again. And so unfortunately, COVID meant more virtual. But what I love about this work is I get to travel and meet other entrepreneurs, and it's because of other entrepreneurs I've grown. I it's because of EO I have become who I am, and I'm serving now on the regional. I served on a regional level. I'm on a global subcommittee. I served on my local board for many years because I'm hoping that what I was able to experience, more entrepreneurs can experience as well. And that's what I love
Interesting.
about this community. So every time I get an opportunity to go speak, I love the dinners or the lunches before or after because then I get to
Hmm.
engage on an intimate level with the members, and you hear
Hmm.
such beautiful stories.
Interesting. And how did this? I'm sure this all had an impact on your personal, your family life. We talked about your personal life, but your family life, your wife, your extended family, and so on. Walk me through that. How did this affect or change that part of your life?
So look, a lot of people think everything is rosy when you go down this journey, but there are some big, big challenges. And I would say that with my wife, I mean, I was changing at such a rapid pace. And I would argue I wasn't changing. I was not being someone I'm not. And I was being true to myself and being authentic. But this started to happen. And one day she wakes up and she goes, Sahil, I don't recognize you anymore. Like, you're not the man that I married. And even though I was so fixated on myself, making myself the priority, because I was just like everything I did, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It's amazing. I gotta keep going. I wasn't aligned with the missus. And so our relationship started to drift. And it got to the point where we both didn't know where the relationship was going. And we just became so distant that it became a big question mark. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? Do I go back to what I was doing before? And I realized, Sahil, no, you've had the courage to come this far, Are you doing anything wrong? No. Are you doing things with love? Yes. What's missing? And it was the communication. Especially when you have young kids, you're so focused on them and your work and this and that. That's what I was focused on. So we were like this. And so
Mm.
I said to her, I said, listen, do you want this? She said yes. And I wanted the relationship as well. So I said, okay, let's work on it. And we started to communicate. So we would set up, like a weekly or whatever. It wasn't so
Hmm.
structured, but just as often as we could, we'd meet in a fairly quiet place without distractions. We wouldn't. We agreed on certain, you know, like a constitution between us, like how we have in our
Hmm.
forum. So all these things helped me so much, where we said no judgment, listen to the other person, share only, don't point fingers and say you this, you that. And we started communicating how we felt with one another, including the challenges that we were having, but knowing that the other person would see it from each other's perspective.
Right.
And so over time, you started to see this gap slowly start to, get smaller and smaller until I would say today we have a real solid understanding of one another, and our marriage is
That's
probably better than it ever was.
that's amazing. Most people have to go to couples therapy to get through to what you've achieved on your own, it seems.
I guess we are, we were lucky. I don't know, but all I know is, and one thing I haven't mentioned is I'm a mountaineer. I've climbed some of the tallest mountains in the world, but I always say when you're climbing up a mountain, it's never like this. It's always going to be with
Right.
its peaks and valleys. And
Right.
so when you're in
Right.
those valleys, it can be very dark. And
Mm.
even those times when I was really struggling with the relationship and we had a fair share of problems, I was so blessed that the forum was there. Because without the forum, every time I went into those very dark valleys, I would have been torn apart. It would have destroyed me, probably would have destroyed some of the relationships in my life. And again, that's the reason why I'm a big believer of dive straight in, and I'm a big believer of this community and what it can do to bring out the best in each and every member.
Interesting. Amazing. What an interesting story. Now, I want to pick on the little mountaineering example.
Hmm.
You mentioned you're a mountaineer, and you mentioned, tell me a little bit about the peaks that you've climbed and what your most favorite one was.
So the first one was we did Everest. We went a little bit higher than Everest Base Camp. That was the first time, and that was just like a dream. Like, oh, it was like a childhood dream. Climb Everest. This obviously wasn't
Hmm.
to the top, but based on ability and first mountain, we said base camp or a little higher than base camp is probably good. And then I got the mountain bug. So they say on the mountain, once you get bit, you want to keep going back.
Right.
But then we had kids, and then the usual excuse, I'm busy, I've got work, because you have to take at least 10, 12 days off sometimes for like beginning to end. And then after I started this journey in 2016, I said, what's this one passion that I've always wanted to do? And I kept making up excuses. Mountaineering. And for January 2017, we signed up to do Kilimanjaro.
Wow, nice.
So I went up with my wife again, and as well as four other women. So it was myself and five women. And that was actually probably my favorite mountain, just because it's a real fun mountain to climb. Like, every morning they do a song and dance. In the evening, they do a song and dance.
Hmm.
And I'd never traveled with five women before, and I really got to understand the women in a lot more depth. Like a lot of my some of my perceptions had
So
changed.
you now understand what women want, is what you're
No, I
saying.
understand a little bit more than I knew before, but I still
Right.
don't understand fully. And then that kind of started the trend. So 2018, I say the group sometimes changes, but my wife and I have been constant. We did Elbrus, which is the tallest mountain in Europe. 2019, we went to Chopicalqui, which is in Peru. And that was the highest and most technical mountain we've climbed so far. It was over 20,000 feet. And, we had to
Hmm.
go up the walls with ice axes and crampons.
Wow. Yep.
And then just now, I just came back from Mexico, where we climbed. but this was the first mountain we could not summit. We climbed the first and the third tallest mountain in Mexico. We got really high
Amazing.
up, but the weather window
Yeah.
didn't allow, and our fitness level didn't allow us to get to the summit. Because we always say at the beginning, going up is optional, but coming down is mandatory. So
Right.
safety first.
Wow. So it sounds like you've had quite the journey. I mean, just the transformation along the way, the experiences that you've had, the discovery of mountaineering. I would say that you should even start a My EO mountaineering group and sort of take and share this passion along the way with others, because I'm sure there's many, many people who want to experience what you've experienced,
Yeah,
and discovered
that
what
sounds
you've
like a good
discovered.
idea. I might do that.
Yeah, so there you go. You've signed me up. I mean, I'd love to test it out at least once, hit something of a base camp somewhere.
Yeah,
But thanks, Sahil. This was interesting. I really enjoyed you taking the time and sharing your journey with us. I think there's a lot of key takeaways for most of us. And for those who are tuned in, Sahil is an author and a speaker. And if you need him to come to your chapter, you can get in touch with him. So stay tuned, Sahil. I'm sure there'll be people hitting you up after this. Thanks a lot. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Bye bye.
thank you.